So if you can as well, share your creative journey, how you got started, and how you got to where you're at now.
By the grace of God. I'll put it on under one umbrella. But when I was in kindergarten, I was playing little bongos, and they're like, this dude can keep a little beat. And so I started developing that gift and would watch another drummer, and I would take two little pins, and while he was playing, I would be playing while he's playing. And that drummer quit, and I was raised on a tour bus with our family, and we went all different places and traveled and sang at events, churches, outdoor festivals, auditoriums, those kind of things. And the drummer quit our family and said, I'm not going to travel with y'all anymore. So at 7 years old, Mom and Dad walked in like, hey, son, guess what you're getting ready to do? And I'm like, what if I don't want to? Like, well, I've got a belt on my britches here that I can use if you need some encouragement. So that's what helped me get started. And then if I ever didn't want to play the drums, the belt always reminded me, maybe it's a good idea. And then at 17, I felt a call from God to start doing music and in other ways than just drums, even though I felt like so uncomfortable and not adequate enough. But he made it very clear that no matter what you do or how far you're going to run, you're going to always circle right back where I want you to be and do what I want you to do. So that's why I finally said, I want to go play professional sports. And I finally just said yes. Yeah, I'll just stop and say yes.
It's easier to say yes.
God always wins. He fights very harder than we do, so he always wins.
That's awesome. So as part of your creative process, what's your biggest piece of advice when it comes to, like, when inspiration hits? What's your advice?
Everything stops. Like, everything stops. Because if I had $1 for every time I had a song idea or anything creative, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll write that down in about 20 minutes. I'll remember that. I'm driving right now, or whatever the case may be. And then 20 minutes later, guess what? It can't be found. The quote I like to say is, seize the opportunity of a lifetime within the lifetime of the opportunity. If you ever watch Monsters, Inc., I don't know if you have any kids, and the doors would just swing by in the factory, that's what creative ideas look like to me. And if you don't grab the door and bring it in, you will lose it. I call them windows of opportunities, not just doors. That's because they're so small. If you don't grab them, they will pass you by. So always stop everything. And I love what you said not too long ago, like a post that you all made, like what do you, if you get writer's block and things like that? I will go and be by myself somewhere. The shower, for whatever reason, is where creativity loves to hit me. So you better grab something that you can have in the shower and write your ideas down. Only one time, maybe two times, has this ever happened where God gave me a song and I wrote the lyrics down in my little note section. And then like 8 months later, I get this idea and I'm like, oh, this is a great idea for a song. And it's the verbatim words that I had wrote down like 8 months ago. So it was like, the Lord was like, hey, are you listening? Please write this down and move forward with this. So, but 9 times out of 10, it will be gone. So stop everything and get it done.
That's really good. So true. Okay. So what would you say is one of the biggest enemies of creativity?
Ashlyn helped teach me this: comparison. Comparison will destroy creativity. Whether you think you're better than someone or whether you think you'll never measure up. I tend to be on the latter part, like, I'll never be as good as that, or I can't do what they do. But comparison will always kill. And this is what helps remind me, like, though, what if John Mayer wanted to be Chris Stapleton? What if Chris Stapleton wanted to be Whitney Houston? What if Whitney Houston wanted to be Mariah Carey? Do you understand what I'm saying? We need what you have because what God's placed in you, He put in no one else. So if you don't do it, it won't be done. Does that make sense? So stop comparing yourself to other people because you don't know what they're going through behind the scenes anyways to have what they have. And many times you look at it and be like, I don't really want to go through that. But so stop comparing yourself. I grew up listening to Michael English, was one of my favorite singers of all time. Dude could, like, oh my gosh, he could sing the paint off the walls. So I mimicked the dude, tried to wear I wore a goatee like he did my hair like my man did. I did everything like he did. And two things happened. I listened to him so much, I was just dreaming like, God, please, I want to be just like him. We did a concert one time with my family, and this woman walks up to me after the concert and is like, I want you to know that you sound just like, I'm like, oh, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And she's like, you sound just like Michael English. I'm like, I can go be with the Lord now. My work on earth is done. But here's what happened. I felt like garbage. That woman didn't know who I was or cared to even know who I was. Yeah. Who was she talking about? Michael English. So I got to meet Michael English's producer in Nashville, and I got to do a record with him one time. And I walked up and I'm like, bro, you know Michael English? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And you travel with Michael English? He goes, bro, we stayed in the same hotel together. I'm like, that's so awesome. And he's like, this dude's a moron. He has no clue. He goes, you do know he puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like you do, right? He said, this greatest piece of advice he's ever given me. Stop trying to be like one person. Grab something from Ashlyn. Grab something from her. Grab something from her. Grab something from him. And make that a well-rounded you. It's okay to get inspiration from other people. Don't be we already have them. God's already created them. We don't need another mimic of them. Grab something from them. And I'm going to grab something from Sadie. And I'm going to grab something from Tanya. And then I'm going to make that a well-rounded me. Does that make sense?
That's awesome.
I digress.
That's so good. What is something that you would caution creatives with?
Stop worrying about what other people think of you. It will stop you from doing what God's put in your heart. I would rather you just go for it and then deal with someone making fun of you later than someone making fun of you and that stopping you from doing it in the first place. That's good. Does that make sense? Yeah. So go for it. There was a story of a group, and I'm going to, what Ryder was saying. There's a story of a group we used to travel with. They were teenagers. I'm sorry, I'm a storyteller. Is that all right?
Yes.
Raise your hand when the 3-minute mark stops.
I'm not.
And they were young teenagers, and they wanted to be in the gospel music industry. These big groups would come into their town, and they would let them open for them. And when they opened for them, they were teenagers. They didn't know any better, and they literally sang the big group song. That's like singing I Can Only Imagine when whatever their names are that sings I Can Only Imagine are going to sing after you. And they're like, stop doing our songs or you'll never open for us again. So they go home, and they're practicing, and they're like, we got to come up with some original music. So one of the teenagers, there was 4 of them, said, I'm going to go downstairs and write a song. He goes downstairs, goes to the bathroom stall, gets a piece of toilet paper, and writes a song called The Lighthouse in 7 minutes. Comes back upstairs and says to his sisters and brother, I got a song. It's called The Lighthouse. He sang it for them. One of the siblings grabbed the piece of toilet paper and threw it in the trash and said, well, that will never go anywhere. But one of the other siblings, like, wait a minute, like a few minutes later, goes and grabs a piece of trash. That's why I love what you said about, like, don't throw it away. Grabs a piece of trash and says, let me sing it. They start singing it, and it takes on a whole new world and different meaning. That song went #1 and was recorded by, like, several groups today. And in their genre of gospel music, it's like the How Great Is Our God of their generation, The Lighthouse. Don't call trash what God calls treasure. So don't throw away what God gives you. Do you understand that some of the greatest ideas are found in one place? Does anyone know where that place is? The greatest ideas on the planet. It's in the cemetery. If you go to the cemetery, you'll find ideas, inventions, creativity like you had never dreamed before that were kept and bottled on the inside and never released out for the world to take advantage of. Don't call trash what God calls treasure. Just do it. Yeah. Just put it out and just do it.
Man, glad we're recording. Okay. I think this is it. What is one piece of advice that you would give creatives on their journey?
I wrote down like 5 things.
Share them all.
Don't create when you're inspired. Only when you're inspired. Just keep creating until the inspiration comes. Because I'm guilty of like, I want to write a song. Lord, send me a song and I'll get an idea. But what if I did like Brian McKnight and wrote a song every day? And what if 80% of them were trash? That's cool. That's cool. You never let the world hear it. But you may find a diamond in the rough that you would have never found had you not been plowing and trying on your own. Does that make sense? So don't wait to be inspired to start creating. Start creating to become inspired. I can't say it enough about please don't listen to what other people think. My own person, there was a person in my immediate family that pulled me off to the side and they were like, I don't know if I put all my eggs in the music basket. And man, that burned so bad. Oh my Lord, it burned. And I'm like, my eggs are in God's basket. And whatever he wants me to do, that's what I'm going to do. And never in my wildest dreams believed that 14 years later they'd pay me to do music full time. When I went to go do our very first single in Nashville, I got a phone call from that exact same person. And they were saying, you know, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go to Nashville and record this music. And I told back to them on the phone, I'm like, I have to do this. Michael Jackson wrote Thriller. And when Michael Jackson wrote that album, his brothers ridiculed him and said, it is trash. It'll never go anywhere. Why are you making a song that sounds like a cartoon? And it went on to be his greatest album of all time. Did you know the person that told me that I should not do those things or put my eggs in the music industry and those kind of things? Now they're my number one fan, and they write me checks every week to support my ministry. Please don't listen to what other people think. Just because they've limited themselves don't mean that you need to be limited because of their handicap.
That's good. Anything else? You had 5, you said.
Oh, 5 things.
You got time if you want to share any more.
Be careful who you share your creativity with, not only from a perspective of people that will knock what you have, but please know that God didn't put it inside of them. He put it inside of you. So don't expect them to understand. When you have an idea or a creativity, like, I'm going to create a writing play. If you go listen to Tyler Perry stuff all day long, they're not going to understand it, and they never will. Why? Because God put it in you. He didn't put it in them. Okay? So I don't look for approval when I go to do something because I already know what I won't get it. It won't find it. Your job is not to explain the will of God. Your job is to obey it. You understand what I'm saying? So be careful with sharing your ideas from that perspective. And then this is the last thing. Be very careful who you let hear your ideas because they'll try to steal it. And like, no. Okay, you don't have to believe me. That's fine. But I got a phone call from another worship leader that was very prominent and well known. And I was like on Elf. It's just an honor to be on this phone call with you right now. You know, I was lit. I'm like, oh, so he goes, so tell me about yourself. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm doing this and God's giving me these things. And he's like, have you written any songs? I'm like, yeah, one of them's called this. And he's like, man, send that to me. I'm like, you want to hear my song? And they're like, yeah, I'd love to hear it. Come on. I'm like, what's your email? So I'm sending it all lit and excited until like a month and a half later, I look at their church's album and the exact title that I sent them with some of the words that I had in my song were on their church's album. I was like, what? And guess what? I've never heard from that person ever again. So be careful who you share your stuff with. There's another thing that when you do writing sessions and stuff, or when you do creativity in the writing world, I went to someone's house and like, hey, what do you think about this song? And I had the song all written. It was done. But what I was looking for was affirmation that it was good enough to be out in the world to let everybody hear it. But because they were listening to it and giving me their affirmation and wanted to throw in 1 or 2 words, guess who has to get some of the credit of my song now? They do. And they didn't even like add that much value. I did all the heavy lifting. Like I built the whole house and they come and put it on the mailbox. You understand what I'm saying? So be very careful who you let share your ideas with. The other thing is, like my sister, this is the last story and I'm done. I had a big songwriting session for the last single called Trust in You. So I asked like all my favorite people who I look up to, like, come and do a songwriting session and let me know what you think. And I invited like 9 people. That's your first mistake. You only need like 3 or 4 people in the room. More than that, everybody and their mama's got an opinion, and you're going to be wasting your time. But my sister called me right before that session started. And if you don't know my sister, she's very prophetic. And she calls me and like literally starts speaking in tongues and prophesying from the Lord that I'm not supposed to have this songwriting session and share my song idea until it's copywritten. And she goes, it's not necessarily because of this song right here, but because where you're going, this is going to be the standard for what God has for you. And you're going to have to do it in a certain way. Copyright your stuff. So guess what I did for the next 3 hours before that songwriting session? I got on the website, went to us.gov, and everything was copyrighted, uploaded, and protected. And when they walked in the door, you want to try to steal my idea? That's cool. That's cool. But I've got it like registered, and I've got proof. And a lot of you are like, bro, I thought you were a sweet spirit and stuff like that. I thought you were very cool. I was until I got burned. And I'm like, never again. Okay? So protect your stuff. God's given it to you for a reason. When you share it, people will either knock it or they may try to steal it. They may knock it so that you won't do it while they're stealing it. Does that make sense? I digress.
That's amazing.